Here are some facts that you probably didn't know that one day could save your life. Part 20. If you're ever cooking and the pan catches on fire, do not throw liquid on it. Instead, use the lid to smother the heat and do not remove it for a few minutes. If your pupils don't dilate to the same size, there is a very real chance you have brain damage. A motorcycle helmet is stronger than a skull. Tea bags actually stop bleeding. They contain a chemical called tannic, which naturally clots your blood. If you're in the wilderness and desperately need water, you can take a plastic bag and hold it against the branch of a willow tree, and it will condensate drinkable water into the bag. Never put tools or heavy objects on the back seat or dash of your car. If you get into a crash, you might survive the collision, but these items could be the cause of your death.
This family in Texas was living with a haunted Elsa doll for years. That's what happened to Emily's daughter, who received an Elsa doll from her grandmother when she turned 1. The family kept the doll for a few years until it started speaking on its own, even when the switch was turned off. Emily also said that after 2 years, the doll suddenly began speaking Spanish, which is weird because it only spoke English the entire time they had it. In 2019, Emily decided to throw Elsa in the trash because at this point, her daughter had this doll for a very long time. But 2 weeks later, Matt opened a wooden bench in their living room and Elsa was in there. Obviously, he was confused, so he asked his kids if they had brought Elsa back into the house, and they said no. So this time, Matt and Emily put Elsa into 2 garbage bags and watched as the garbage truck picked up their garbage and took it away. But it doesn't end there. 2 weeks later, their daughter casually told them that she saw Elsa in their backyard. So when she went outside, she saw Elsa there. And at this point, Emily was freaked out and she decided to send Elsa to a friend 2,400 kilometers away with no return label. Emily said that since the doll's been gone, there has been weird things happening in their home, such as lights turning on and off and doors opening and closing. So do you guys think Elsa was haunted, or is there another explanation for all of this?
People are freaking out after realising they definitely should not be doing this. You all have pillows. You're probably laying on one right now watching this video, right? And I bet some of you, if you took off the pillowcase, the pillow is pretty damn dirty. And let me ask you, how old is your pillow? How long have you actually had it? And I'm not just talking about the pillowcases. Obviously, you've got to clean those every week. But the actual physical pillow, I guarantee some of you have still got the same one since when you were a child or something. All of you probably know to change your bedding every week or two, and obviously actually physically replace the sheets after a couple of years. But what people didn't realise is that the actual physical pillow has an expiry date on it. An actual expiry date. And if you don't throw the pillow away before that, then you're in for a treat. There is of course millions of bacteria living on your bed, on your pillows, because you're sleeping on it all night long, which is the reason why you've got to replace your bedding so regularly. But over time, this gets into the pillows, and the pillows don't like it. Over time become very, very bad, and normally you should be throwing your pillows away every 2 years and replacing them. I saw someone doing this test where apparently you can fold them, and if they stay up when they're folded, that means it's time to say goodbye. But as I say, I guarantee some of you have some dirty pillows that you've probably had for your whole life. It's time to throw them out.
This is the terrifying case of the Santa serial killer. During Pride Festival in 2017 in Canada, Andrew Kinsman disappeared. He was the 8th man to go missing from the local area. When police entered Andrew's apartment, they found something interesting on his calendar. It said Bruce, 3 p.m. This clue led police to Bruce MacArthur. Bruce had had a troubled childhood growing up with a violent alcoholic father. Due to his religious family, he was made to hide his sexuality. He ended up marrying Janice Campbell, his high school girlfriend, but actually he was having a lot of affairs with men behind her back. He was working as a landscape gardener and also a part-time Santa Claus at the mall. In his role as Santa, he would greet children and entertain shoppers. When Janice discovered his infidelity, she divorced him, but nobody could guess what was going to unfold. In 2010, within 4 months of each other, 2 gay men disappeared from the neighbourhood of Church and Wellesley, the gay village of Toronto. 18 months later, another disappeared. Interestingly, all 3 were middle-aged immigrants. An anonymous tip came in linking Bruce with the men, but unfortunately there was no evidence to proceed any further. Then in 2012, a tip came through to police saying that a potential cannibal was loose in the area. A man was posting on underground websites claiming to have eaten brown flesh. Police discovered a man was writing on the website with the name Silver Fox, and they linked it to an email address which was linked to Bruce. However, when they questioned him, he was very friendly and helpful, so they just let him go. More men began vanishing and the total rose to 8. This brings us back to Andrew Kinsman. After seeing that Bruce was written on Andrew's calendar, they scoured CCTV from the local area and found CCTV of Andrew getting into a red van. Luckily, they tracked the van down and found it at a wrecking yard, but still intact. This was Bruce's van, and Andrew's blood was inside. They also seized Bruce's computer and found disturbing images of the men. Andrew had photographed all of the deceased men that had gone missing. He placed them in poses after being killed and photographed them. The next part of the story is an extremely dramatic turn of events, but I'm not going to have time, so I'm going to have to do a part 2.
Zuza has very sadly passed away. If you don't know, Zuza was a very popular TikToker. Her and her friend Samara, who described Zuza as a little sister, made videos together. Well, for those that don't know, Zuza had cancer and she has very sadly succumbed to that. And Samara has made a video reacting to Zuza's passing that is absolutely devastating to watch. Rest in peace to you, Zuza. My prayers go out to you and your family.
A woman has been accused of murdering her parents after their dismembered bodies were found at their home. Verity Beck is a 43-year-old woman who'd been living with her elderly parents, Reed and Miriam Beck, in Pennsylvania. Police received a 911 call from Verity's brother concerned that he had seen what he thought was a body under a blanket during a visit to their house. Horrifically, when authorities arrived at the property, they found both parents, who were in their 70s, at different stages of dismemberment. District Attorney Kevin Steele said there were signs of extreme trauma, and I'll tell you that a chainsaw was found. He said Verity used this chainsaw and then had put parts of her parents into trash bags and covered them up, and they were actually in 2 different trash cans. The autopsy results confirmed that both of the parents died from gunshot wounds to the head. Verity's brother had actually spoken to her prior to calling police, and Verity had told him that things at home were bad. She reportedly explained that she needed more time, but he called 911. It's not yet clear when these murders took place, but police found an unread newspaper from January the 7th in the house. Now, this date is the exact date that Verity's brother last spoke to his mum. It isn't yet clear what the motive for this horrific crime was, but there was a safe in the house that has been tampered with. Verity has been charged with first-degree murder and third-degree murder and is being held without bail.
Blood-curdling facts you did not want to know. Up until 1974, it was illegal to appear in the streets of Chicago if you were ugly. The best way to torture someone and make it as painful as possible is to steam them alive. It takes longer to destroy their nerves, the sensation is hotter than boiling water, and your organs are cooked from the inside out. Kagura syndrome is a mental delusion where you believe that the people around you have been replaced by imposters. The movie The Hills Have Eyes is based on a Scottish group from the 16th century called the Bean Clan. And over the course of 25 years, they killed and ate over 1,000 people. Brains taste like ice cream. If you live in a major city, there is currently a nuclear weapon pointed at you as you're watching this video.
I'm gonna ruin your childhood memories, part 4. Did you ever play Ring Around the Rosie as a kid? Well, that game isn't so fun and innocent. Ring Around the Rosie was actually based off the plague. Pocket full of posies referred to roses in your pockets which would hide the smell of decomposing bodies. Ashes ashes referred to the cremated bodies whose ashes were spread around town. And then we all fall down meant death to everyone who got the plague.
Here's what all you missed from yesterday's rapture. So all over the world, people decided the rapture was happening yesterday. While this was happening, all over the world, people are doing things like gathering outside and singing hymns while they await the second coming. Apparently, there was even a school that let the students out, so that way they wouldn't hit their heads on the ceiling when the rapture happens, which I don't think that's how that works. There were also a lot of people who were just putting their belongings in their front yard to give away as they wouldn't need it after the rapture occurred. One girl showed off a lamp that was worth a lot, that she got from her neighbor that just put all their stuff in their yard. By the way, the people who did this are still here today. They just have less stuff now. One person even took this rapture giveaway a step further and gave away their whole car. There are also many people that you should be seeing updates from today, as there are a lot of people that were very adamant that they were going to be raptured and they were posting videos about it. And one guy even said that he would post an apology if he wasn't. Still waiting on that apology. Now, if y'all remember, these rapture rumors were started by a South African preacher. So just remember in the future, please be wary of any preacher that tells you the date that the rapture is happening. Because in the Bible, it says nobody will know the actual date that it happens.
So it's December 20th, 2024, and 33-year-old Teresa Bermel decides to bring Jello shots to a Christmas party. The only problem? The partygoers were 5th graders. She brought Jello shots into her daughter's elementary school for their annual Christmas party. So they look something like this. They're a huge hit with the kids, and within minutes, 36 of the 40 are gone. So a little bit of time goes by, a couple kids start complaining of a headache, a couple kids start complaining of a stomach ache, 2 kids start throwing up, and 1 kid who had 6 Jello shots straight up passes out. Teachers, who are like, what in the hell is going on, smell the alcohol, send the kids to the nurse, and by 11:15 in the morning, the assistant principal has called 911. So the cops contact the bakery that made these Jello shots, and they're like, absolutely not. There's no way she didn't know there was alcohol in these. Apparently, the flyer that Teresa ordered from says contains vodka, and the bakery owner showed a correspondence of text messages where Teresa straight up asked the owner, do these contain alcohol? Which she, of course, said yes. Teresa has been arrested and bail was set at $75,000.
When Actors Break Character, Part 9. In Monty Python, the actors playing as guards were instructed not to laugh, but they had no idea what was coming in the next scene. Upon the mention of Biggest Dickus, one of the guards started breaking into laughter.
I have a very great friend in Rome called Biggest Dickus.
After noticing this, Michael Palin decided to roll with it and began testing other guards to see if they'd laugh.
Dickus. Dickus.
One guard was even sucking in his cheeks to prevent laughter because the other 2 had already failed.
Did not kill my daughter Harmony.
Now, apparently he thought that if there was no body, then he could not be charged with her murder. So he even had considered at one point using a handsaw or a NutriBullet to, quote, get rid of Harmony. Can you imagine that? As a parent, trying to dismember your 5-year-old daughter with a handsaw and a freaking NutriBullet. It is beyond horrific. Now, his wife, Kayla, Harmony's stepmother, helped him cut off Harmony's clothing, which were still on her frozen little remains, while he was literally trying to thaw her out again. That's what he would do. It was a pattern. Freeze her, thaw her, squeeze her, freeze her, thaw her. Like, it is so unhinged. Apparently, too, in another gruesome detail, as if it couldn't get more horrific, Kayla and Adam had sex while Harmony's remains were in the ceiling above them, decomposing, her bodily fluids seeping into the ceiling, and they were right below her, sleeping and having sex. How disgusting are you? I mean, guys, it gets way, way worse than this either. This is like the mild version, so I am breaking it all down for you over on my podcast seriously, but please be warned, it is the most barbaric case I think I've ever covered to date.
On the night of September 8th, 1987, 77-year-old Minnie Clyde Winston got out of the bathtub and saw tiny droplets of a red substance all over the bathroom that hadn't been there just a short time before. She called out to her husband, 79-year-old William Winston, thinking maybe he had cut himself, but he was completely fine. They soon discovered the blood was all around the kitchen, the living room, the halls, the basement, and the crawl space. They called the police, but there was no sign of a crime. The investigation revealed the substance was human blood, but it didn't match either of the types of the Winstons, so 6 women have been found dead within 100 miles of the Portland, Oregon area over the last 3 months. And now residents are concerned that there may be a serial killer on the loose. These women all either lived in or often visited the Portland area. And while at this time it's unclear if their deaths are connected, investigators are looking into all possible connections. The first victim found was 22-year-old Kristen Smith. So far, according to the medical examiner, her cause and manner of death are yet to be determined. On April 8th, Joanna Speaks was found in an abandoned property about 22 miles north of Portland. She died by blunt injuries to the neck and head, and it is believed that her body was moved to the location where it was found. On April 24th, Charity Perry's body was found, and investigators said that there was an investigation into her suspicious death. That same day, another body was found, and this victim is yet to be identified. She was found in southeast Portland's Lentz neighborhood, and authorities are asking for the public's help in identifying her. It is believed she may be Native American or Native Alaskan and between the ages of 25 and 40. 6 days later, on April 30th, Bridget Webster was found. She was from Milwaukee and would visit the Portland area often. Her cause and manner of death have also been yet to be released. Investigators are looking into if all of these suspicious deaths may or may not be connected, and residents are very concerned that there may be a serial killer on the loose.
If I ever go missing, I hope these are the first people to come looking for me. The Midnight Order was formed by Dr. Sasha Reed, who's established one of the largest databases in the world on serial killers. She's already helped Canadian authorities catch one serial killer. Now she has a diverse team of women from around the world to help. Recently, Sasha was contacted by a woman who believes her ex-husband could be a serial killer, and this docuseries gives you an inside look into their investigations. They dive deep into these cold cases, interviewing families, visiting the crime scenes, helping in ground searches, etc. They also take a look at Canada's most infamous serial killer, Robert Pickton. He confessed to the murder of 49 women, but was only convicted in 6. Oh, and by the way, he recently died in prison. Watch Freeform's Sasha Reed and the Midnight Order, stream now on Hulu.
New York man convicted of killing a 20-year-old who mistakenly pulled into his driveway. The jury convicted 66-year-old Kevin Monahan of killing Caitlin Gillis. On April 15, 2023, officers responded to a report of gunshots fired. When they got to the scene, they found Caitlin Gillis with a gunshot wound. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Apparently, Caitlin Gillis and her friends were lost and they were looking for a friend's house, so they mistakenly drove up Kevin Monahan's driveway. As they were driving away from his driveway, he decided to come outside and start firing for whatever reason. It was also reported Monahan was not cooperating with deputies at the scene. There were about 4 people in the car, and he fired a 20-gauge shotgun into the car, which hit Caitlin Gillis in the neck. In court, Monahan said the first shot was a warning, and the second shot was because he tripped and fell on some nails. His attorney said Monahan did not want to shoot anybody, but why else would he come outside with a shotgun and fire 2 shots? He faces 25 years to life in prison, and he will be sentenced in March. Hopefully he never comes out. Let me know what you guys think about the story in the comment section below, and reminder, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This little girl here, her name is Terry Jo, and she would go on to survive the absolute impossible. But before I tell you what happened, hi, my name is Ashley, and I talk about crime, creepy, and unbelievable stories. If you're into that, then check out my TikTok and YouTube for more content. So the story begins when Terry Jo's father decided to rent out this luxury yacht called the Blue Belle for a family trip. It was to set sail from Fort Lauderdale in Florida all the way to the Bahamas. On the boat would be Arthur and his wife Jean, and their 3 kids, Brian, Terry Jo, and Renee. Arthur had also asked his friend and former Marine and former war veteran Julian Harvey to join him on the boat as the boat's skipper. Jean was also married to Mary Harvey, so he brought her along as well. So in total, there were 7 people on the boat. Everything had been going fine with everyone for the first 5 days, then things drastically changed. On the evening of the 5th night, Terry Jo said she woke up in the middle of the night because she heard a lot of noise coming from upstairs on the deck. So she goes upstairs and she hears her mother screaming. Then she sees her mother and her brother on the floor, and there was blood absolutely everywhere. She then sees Julian approaching her, so she asks him what's going on. He then slaps her across the face and orders her to go back downstairs to her room. So being a young child, she listens and goes back down. However, a short while later, she starts to see the water rising from the window. So she goes back upstairs and asks Julian if the boat is sinking, and he tells her that it was. Terry Jo then sees Julian jump into the only lifeboat on the ship and sail off into the ocean. At this point, she was completely alone on the boat when she remembered that there was a spare raft in one of the rooms. It was a very small raft similar to this one here, but it was enough for Terry Jo's size. So having no other choice, Terry Jo throws this little raft into the ocean and then hops in. She would then spend the next 84 hours alone at sea. And at one point throughout those 84 hours, the net mesh that you see in the photo ended up disintegrating. So her only option at that point was to literally sit on the edge with her feet dangling in the water.
Then on the 4th day, a passing ship spotted Terry Jo in the water. This was a photo taken of her rescue. So they help her, they bring her onto the ship and take her to the hospital. We would later find out that Julian unalived Terry Jo's entire family and his wife Mary. It's suspected that he was trying to unalive his wife to collect her life insurance, but it's assumed that Terry Jo's father, Arthur, caught him in the act and intervened. That's when he then proceeded to unalive the entire family. But that's not it. We would later find out that Julian actually survived the shipwreck as well. He was also rescued by a boat. And on the day Julian was rescued, he was also told that Terry Jo had miraculously survived. He pretended like he was happy to hear that. However, the next day in his motel room, he unalived himself. Terry Jo would then grow up to have a fairly normal life.
Did you guys know that in 2019, Ashton Kutcher had to go to court over a serial killer? This is Michael Gargiulo. He's been dubbed by the media as the Hollywood Ripper or the boy next door killer. Michael would kill in his own neighborhood, and investigators would say this made it easier for him to stalk his victims. Michael's first known victim was 18-year-old Trisha Picatrio, who was also sisters with Michael's close friend. In 1993, her body would be found outside of her own home. She had been stabbed at least 12 times, and her murder would go unsolved for about 18 years. Just a few years after Trisha's murder, Michael kind of set off alarm bells when he went to visit Trisha's family home. He insisted on talking to Trisha's father, who was at work at the time. He waited over an hour for him to return home. But when Trisha's father returned home, he suddenly had to leave. This set off alarm bells with the Picatrio family, and they actually let the police know. But shortly after this, Michael moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting. While Michael was in LA, he met 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin, who was an aspiring actress and fashion designer. She had also become good friends with actor Ashton Kutcher, who had asked her out on a date in February of 2001. Around 8:24 that night, Ashton called Ashley to let her know that he was running late for their dinner date. And according to Ashton's testimony, Ashley told him that she'd just gotten out of the shower, which made the prosecution believe that Ashton was probably the last person that Ashley spoke to while she was alive. Shortly after their phone call, Ashley was brutally murdered. Later that night around 10:30, Ashton showed up to try to pick Ashley up for their date. Such a side note, but Ashton, really? 10:30 for a dinner date? Okay. He knocked on the door several times and got no response. Right before he was about to leave, he peeked through the window and saw what he thought was red wine stains on the carpet. Seeing the stains, Ashton thought that Ashley had gotten sick of waiting for him and decided to go out that night on her own. The next morning, Ashley's roommate and friend would return home to find her friend brutally murdered. Ashley had been stabbed a total of 47 times. Now, Ashton would later testify that he immediately called the police when he heard about this because his fingerprints were on the door. Police quickly ruled him and another man that Ashley was dating at the time out of the case. However, it took them a long time to tie this crime to Michael. In the meantime, though, the other investigating officers were able to get a DNA sample from Michael that had matched some of the DNA left on the scene at Trisha's murder. But at the time, investigators ruled this DNA out because Michael had given Trisha a ride home the night before. And even though this DNA was found under Trisha's fingernails, they said this could have easily been transfer DNA. So they let him go, and in 2005, he murdered again, taking the life of 32-year-old Maria Bruno, who was also a mother of 4. At the time, police hadn't tied together the other 2 murders, and he left behind very little evidence at the scene of Maria's murder, leaving investigators stumped until 2008, when he attacked a woman named Michelle in her own bedroom. Michelle fought back, cutting Michael in the process, and he fled, leaving a trail of blood DNA behind him. This, along with Michelle's statement, would close all 3 of these cases, but it would take years for this to go to trial. Michael was sentenced to death in California over Maria and Ashley's murders. He is still awaiting a trial over Trisha's in Illinois. He claims to have up to 10 victims.
This woman burned alive the man who raped her daughter. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is Maria del Carmen Garcia. This case takes place in Spain, just outside of Alicante, and in October 1998, Maria is cooking some dinner for her husband and her 13-year-old daughter, Veronica, when she notices that she's run out of bread. Maria went to Veronica asking if she wouldn't mind popping down to the shop and picking some up, and Veronica was happy to do so. She slipped on her shoes and walked out the door. As Veronica was walking down the street, a neighbour of hers, 62-year-old Antonio Cosme, was was getting into his car. Recognizing one another, Veronica and Antonio smiled and greeted each other when out of nowhere, Antonio grabbed Veronica, dragged her to his car, forced her inside, and then drove away. He would drive Veronica to a secluded wooded area where he would horrifyingly rape her at knife point. Hours later, he dropped Veronica back off in her street, and before he let her out of the car, he threatened her, telling her not to tell anyone what had happened. However, by the time Veronica went back into her home, Maria was already frantic. She had only sent her 13-year-old daughter down to the shop to buy some bread, and at this point, she had been gone for hours. After some gentle pressing from her mother, Veronica broke and told her everything, how she was walking down the street and Antonio forced her into the car, held her at knife point, and horrifically raped her. Immediately, the Del Carmen Garcias went down to the police station to report this. Bruises, scrapes and marks that were found all across Veronica's body supported what she was saying, proving that this horrible thing had happened to her. However, the local community weren't convinced. Antonio Cosme came from a very powerful, prominent, well-respected Spanish family, and due to his age as well, again he was 62, the local community didn't believe that he could do something like this, and so instead of believing Veronica, they branded her as a liar. Despite this, however, Antonio was charged, taken to court, and he was handed a sentence of 9 years imprisonment for this. Over the next couple of years, the mental health of the Del Carmen Garcia family deteriorated. Veronica allegedly spent some time in a psychiatric hospital, and Maria fell into a deep depression. Shockingly, after only serving 5 years of his sentence, Antonio was granted the ability to leave the prison on several day releases, much to the disappointment of Veronica's family, who at this point had lost all faith in the justice system. On the evening of the 13th of June 2005, Maria is stood at a bus stop just outside of Alicante when someone familiar begins to approach her. This person leans over to Maria's ear and whispers, quote, "How's your daughter?" before walking away smirking. Maria stood in shock and disbelief because that person was Antonio. He was out on a day release and he was taunting Maria. Her daughter had suffered for years due to this man's heinous actions, and now here he is, released from prison on day release, casually walking down the street heading to a bar to go for drinks with his friends. Blinded with rage, Maria stormed to a nearby petrol station where she picked up a container filled with gasoline. She made her way to the bar where Antonio was drinking with his friends, and in a flash she doused him in the gasoline, setting him on fire and burning him alive. Antonio would sustain 90% burns across his entire body, and he would succumb to his injuries in the hospital, dying a couple of days later. Maria would be arrested, and she received an outpour of support from her community. People would gather outside of the court and they would chant and cheer for her. A petition that was set up had over 10,000 signatures for Maria to be let off with the crime. Despite all of the support and the petitions, they didn't work. Maria would be found guilty, and upon appeal she would receive a sentence of 5.5 years. The judge in this case recognising that at the moment that Maria doused Antonio in gasoline and set him on fire, he wasn't in the right state of mind. At that very moment she was temporarily insane. After serving her time, Maria del Carmen Garcia would be released from a prison in Alicante in 2018.